While the United States grows more liberal, Israel is turning more conservative. Peace Now reviews Obama versus Trump, which was more pro-settlement. What will President Trump accomplish in the next 2 months, or will it be 4 years? Don't go away. This is the Joshua and Caleb Report.
In a world plagued with anti-Israel propaganda, Hayovel presents the Joshua and Caleb Report, a positive voice of truth straight from Israel's heartland.
In a world of negativity and fake news, every Christian should be connected to the life and positivity that Israel brings to the world. Guys, don't forget to subscribe. We're out there on every YouTube, you name it, Apple Podcast, Podbean, what else, Luke?
Google Play, Spotify, wherever you listen,
Wherever
we're
you're at.
there. You can subscribe for free on every single platform. You just hit that subscribe or follow button on YouTube. Of course, hit subscribe and hit the bell, and all will be well.
And if you're like every other American in the world or something, go ahead and hit something else. I think
Hit like,
hit
comment, send us a question, just send us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you, and it really does actually help. We've gotten a lot of subscribers in the last couple of weeks, and it really helping the show grow and take off. So thank you guys for that.
That's right. Just to clarify, Luke, we just don't hit anybody. That's really what the world is coming to right now. Don't hit people. We're going to talk a little bit not about that, thank God. Everybody else is talking about that, talking about...
we're supposed to be in one of the most volatile places in the world, and we don't see people hitting each other.
Yeah,
so.
no. So we're
in the biblical heartland of Israel, just in case you didn't know.
We're actually going to talk about something so incredibly advanced, more than just talking about hatred and how people don't like each other anymore.
Right.
We're going to talk about how that's actually changing here in Israel versus the rest of the world is going crazy.
I talked about it in the intro,
We're going to see something else happen here in Israel. We're seeing it actually happen here in Israel. That's very exciting to me.
Yes, yeah. So with that, we're diving into the news this week. So much positivity. I'm actually a little encouraged because a month ago, there was so much negativity in the news. I don't know if it was the riots in the U.S., the protests, the elections, what it was, but it just seemed like every week because this show is all about being positive and bringing the life of Israel to the world, and of course we always do that. Every single show we find those pieces of news and those stories to bring to you all over the world, but it was a little difficult for a couple months there, but the last few weeks, so much positivity happening. God is moving. If you're in the United States, don't be discouraged. No matter what's going on, you're still wondering what's going on with the elections because God is moving here in the land of Israel. We're witnessing it, and we're telling you all about it, and it is very encouraging. Starting off, the Israeli right hits a record high as the left plummets to an all-time low.
What do you mean by Israeli right? We're talking about the Israeli conservative, you name it. I even saw something about homeschooling. People are starting to homeschool like crazy here in Israel.
It's kind of been doubled.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe people are finding out they like it.
That's exactly what's happening. People are finding they like it.
And two, when you talk about the right wing in Israel, actually, for the most part, you're talking about religious Zionists. So like people that believe in the Bible. So a lot of the right wing bloc is represented by Orthodox Israelis, which is amazing because you don't necessarily see that in the United States. Latest polls here in Israel are that the right-wing, mostly religious bloc would win 70 seats if new elections were held today, the most in over a decade of polling.
Which is an extremely strong government. That kind of government can do things.
Right, because for the past, ever since I can remember, I've been coming here to Israel for about 12 years, every election, it's like they barely get over that 60-seat majority or 61-seat majority that they need to form a government. And for the first time ever, the polls, of course, we can't always trust everything the polls say, but that's pretty good, a 12-seat increase for the right-wing bloc over the 58 seats that it won in March. The left wing...
But you got to say that's a 12-seat increase from what they had in the last elections.
Yeah, that's massive.
So it's a huge increase.
The left-wing bloc, by contrast, is projected that they would fall to just 42 seats, down from 55. Yamina, which is headed by Naftali Bennett, has 5 seats in the government today. They're polling at more than 23 seats. It's crazy. Blue and white would go down from 15 seats to 9 seats if new elections were held today. I think it's amazing. Who knows when we'll see elections? It's possible very soon. It's kind of hard to tell here in Israel when you will see new elections. For sure, within the next 6 months to a year.
Well, the whole government thing with probably, everything's probably with Gantz Bibi only had an 18-month period where he was going to be.
Benny Gantz, he's supposed to serve as the alternate prime minister, which means after 18 months, so that would be end of next summer, he would step into the role of prime minister. I think even he said, for sure that's not happening. Most people say there's no way the government's going to make it that
election should definitely happen before that. Now, one thing that has pushed this election extremely right-wing is because of Naphtali Bennett. Naphtali Bennett is an amazing character. He's a religious Jewish fellow, hardcore Zionist fellow. He's done incredible things for the settlements. He's been very active in the settlement movement. He is rising to the top and potentially even premiership to become the prime minister
I would say
of Israel.
so at some point.
With this kind of move, and one reason why he's become extremely popular is because of his management of the coronavirus crisis.
And the defense ministry, too.
Because he was the defense minister and had that role of taking it on for just the very beginning. And everything
not very long.
Did was
and
so
he did
amazing.
amazing things in a very short period of time.
So that's one reason for the takeover. Luke, I want to compare something real quick because the rest of the world, I think we can't pass it by too quickly because the rest of the world is, look at it, really shambles. Like the world is going crazy, not only on a political framework. You also have anti-God, secular agendas, you name it, across the board going crazy. I don't know of any other place in the entire world that the opposite of that's happening.
Yeah, they're turning more conservative, more Bible focused,
more family centered. You name all the conservative values anywhere in the world that happening. There's only one spot in the world that's happening, and that's Israel. And if you actually want to narrow it in even more, Judea and Samaria.
I wonder.
These communities of Judea and Samaria, it's like a little heaven on earth if you're a conservative.
No, I didn't prepare the stats for this show, but their statistics, I think the birth rate, basically the family values rate is much higher in the heartland of Israel, even than the rest of Israel, and then Israel in general, much higher than
the birth rate's about 6
in the world. Yeah.
6 in the religious Orthodox communities.
Unprecedented.
Family-friendly, incredible communities here. So I just want to contrast that and then relate it back to the Bible. Because what does the Bible say? It says that the light will go forth out of Zion, right?
Yeah.
So the word of God will go forth out of Zion. The rest of the world, as it gets darker and darker, there's still righteous people out there in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And they're looking for a light. And those people that are looking for the light,
they should be looking here. Yeah.
They should be looking towards Zion.
And that's slowly happening. We're seeing it. Yeah. We're part of it. You can be a part of it. We have volunteers that come every year that can be a part of it, people that invest, people that pray, that stand alongside Israel, the heartland, Hayovel, the work that we're doing here.
Luke, I was talking to a Jewish fellow the other day, and he told me he's actually the holy cacao guy down in Judea. He creates chocolate. He told me, he said, in one way it's exciting. We see the world going crazy and, leftist agendas or whatever. We don't want that. Mm-hmm. We don't want that to happen. We'd rather that the world just continue to live in righteousness.
Yeah,
we want the good to prevail. But he said, you know what? In a way, it's exciting because we know the end of the story. Mm-hmm. That righteousness will prevail, and there's going to be a battle for that righteousness to prevail, and we see that battle taking place now. He said, so in a way, and we know that God's going to do big things here in Israel in that whole scheme, that whole battle that takes place. So we're here on the front lines of Israel, and we're seeing good things happening. On this side, literally, we're living in Bible times. I think that's the encouragement for people. No matter how bad it's going to get, and we see things going crazy, we're seeing some really good things. And God is going to be with his people. It's promised over and over and over again throughout
the Bible. Speaking of good things, there is a report, and by the time you watch this show, you might already know if it happened or not, but Mike Pompeo is visiting Israel this week. We know that for sure, but there is several reports that he wants to visit Judea and Samaria. Psagot Winery, to be specific, which is just north of Jerusalem in the Benjamin, Samaria region, which would be a very first for a Secretary of State to cross the Green Line. Now, senior PA cabinet leader has warned against Pompeo visiting here. He said that it would, and this is just amazing. Senior Palestinian Authority government officials said that if Pompeo visits Judea and Samaria, it would, quote, legitimize the settlements, and he claims that it would set a dangerous precedent. I just think that's amazing because, yes, I'm agreeing with a PA government official. Yes, it would legitimize the settlements, and it would set a precedent. Yeah. I wouldn't call it dangerous. I think it would be a good precedent. Right. So, it's a report that he is going to visit the Psagot Winery this week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday in the middle of the week. State Department has not confirmed his itinerary and would only say that he is coming to Israel to meet with the prime minister. What's so cool is that Pompeo annulled a State Department legal opinion last year. It was from 1978 which deemed that Israeli communities in Judea and Samaria are inconsistent with international law. He effectively declared that settlements are not illegal per se.
Called the Pompeo Doctrine.
Yeah,
now.
and Psagot Winery, which you might visit, made a wine called the Pompeo wine. And I heard that they actually shipped a case to him. So maybe this is why he's getting connected
It's
here.
a personal favor now.
You found something about Joe Biden connected to this.
Yeah, I did actually, Luke. And more than that, we picked the grapes that went into that.
Yes,
bottle
you should know that.
We should.
Those bottles of wine that were called Pompeo were picked by our volunteers.
Now, on a political note, Joe Biden. Now, you can't get two polar opposites here. We've got Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, coming in and saying settlements are legal. Now, why did he have to say that? Because of the laws that were put in place by the UN to say, no, these settlements are illegal, right? Now, who pushed for those laws? There's a specific law that goes, the UN pushed that was 2334, and that was pushed by Joe Biden himself. He pushed to get to recognize that settlements are illegal. This is one of Joe Biden's like platforms for sure. You're not going to get it. Like Joe Biden himself stands against building in Judea and Samaria. That's one of his main don't change. This is Joe Biden, right? Boom. Right. He fought for this to happen in the UN, that they would nullify settlements, no longer any international law settlements illegal, and. Who challenges that, and who actually overturned it? Mike Pompeo.
Which actually that UN law was adopted by the UN on January 20th, 2017, the day President Trump entered the White House. What's amazing to me is Mike Pompeo is the very first Secretary of State to visit the Western Wall, the Golan Heights, and potentially Judea and Samaria. That blows my mind that U.S. government officials would actually avoid going to the Western Wall because part of Easter. People don't know that.
They don't know that.
And that's pre-1967 borders. People talk about actually turning that back into a Palestinian state. Mike Pompeo, he's a bold guy. Something tells me there's a good chance he's going to be in Judea and Samaria at the Psagot Winery.
Which, guys, this is it's exciting for us because not only is this our home territory here, we're doing a ton of work, especially in the vineyards and the wine. It's potential we could be shaking Mike Pompeo's hand next week, Luke. Come on, it's not out of the question. Who knows? The only reason
we'll let you know next week.
We'll let you know.
Stay tuned. Yeah,
stay tuned. Maybe not. But anyway, Luke. Also, there was rockets fired just last night, the wee hours of the night last night. Boom, boom! Rockets
from Gaza,
went flying out of Gaza. They actually came all the way in and were over Tel Aviv when time the Iron Dome shot them out of the sky. Wow. I think about that Iron Dome, and you think about what it would have looked like if Iron Dome wasn't there.
Right.
That would have been tragic.
80% of Israel's population lives right there on the coastal plain.
One went over Ashdod, one went over Tel Aviv. Both of them were taken out. No casualties, thank God. If you didn't have that technology.
Still happening. Yeah.
And that's another place that the U.S. and actually Israel work together on the Iron Dome technology. That's something that the nation is very blessed by, thank God. There's a major problem, though, the world is still not seeing. That's a problem for someone or a whole group of terrorists to be in Gaza. That's another thing that Biden says immediately. Aid's going back to Gaza. All this, when do you not see through the error of the ways, right? Why do you want to benefit and show kindness to flat-out terrorists?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
Luke.
Okay. Whether or not you think President Trump is going to be in office for 4 more years or only 2 more months, and no, we're not making predictions. We don't know.
Predictions here.
We do not know what's happening. What could he accomplish in the next 2 months? And some interesting information about previous presidents and what they tried to accomplish in their last days of the presidency, which tells you that the Israel issue for every single American president in our recent time is top of their list. So when the deal of the century came out, a joint U.S.-Israeli mapping committee was formed. They met in February. I believe they have not met since then. Obviously, a lot of things took center stage, COVID-19, riots, protests in the U.S., and then Arab nations making or normalizing relations with Israel. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. So there's been a lot of things happening since then. The normalization, the Abraham Accords agreements kind of took center stage over the deal of the century. Some people are calling for the deal of the century to come back to center stage because if President Trump only has 2 more months, he would need to work fast to get things moved through. Some people would like for him to release what the mapping committee has decided so that Israel can know where to apply sovereignty, or as they say, declare annexation in those certain parts. Talk about that again in just a second. Now, what have previous presidents done right at the end of their terms in office. President Clinton brought together Israeli and Palestinian negotiators at Camp David as late as December 2000. They failed to reach an agreement on his two-state solution proposal, and right before he stood down as president in January 2001. President George W. Bush, he had his 2002 roadmap and 2007 Annapolis process. It never came to a fruition. He attempted to solidify gains made with a UN resolution on December 16th, 2008, right before he left office in January 2009. President Barack Obama, he discarded Bush's plan for his own peace initiatives. They came to naught in April 2014 when negotiations were broken off. But in December 2016, as he was preparing to leave the White House, he proposed another two-state solution based on the pre-1967 armistice lines. So it's very interesting to me. You have the previous three presidents that Israeli-Palestinian peace process was at the top of their agendas for their entire presidency, but right before they left office, you have weeks, days left maybe, and it's like, what's going to be most important for you? Every single president made the Israel-Palestinian issue top of their...
Which to me, Luke, this is unbelievable. Why would an entire country that has their own issues and own problems and stuff, why would they make it a foreign issue?
You would think they would be working on economy, jobs, military, whatever it is, healthcare, stuff like that. But can guarantee Israel's going to be at the top of the list. So what could Trump still...
Well, he's got 2 months left.
If he has 2 months left,
well, we know he does,
what could he still do?
Yeah.
He could release the mapping committees, and we're talking specifically about Israel here. He could release the mapping committee's map showing the areas of Judea and Samaria where Israeli sovereignty can be applied now. He could procure consent to that map by Egypt, Jordan, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, all who have normalized their relationships with Israel.
More nations could normalize, and that could even be a bigger list.
Then, yeah. He could get other states to normalize their relationships with Israel and agree to the mapping committee's proposals. He could attempt to get the PLO, or maybe the PA, to negotiate with Israel and give them the green light to apply sovereignty when it considers appropriate. Okay, my questions from this is, does Israel need Donald Trump to tell them when, where, and how they can apply sovereignty to Judea and Samaria? Because that's what they're saying, okay, let's find out where the United States says we can apply sovereignty. Then let's get all the Arab nations to agree to it. Then we can do it, even if Joe Biden becomes president.
Well, Luke, I think we just talked about that earlier. Is the United States actually the world superpower? That's what the world all thinks.
Right.
And they would say, naturally, the world superpower would be the one to call the shots for the rest of the world. So if Israel's going to be...
Well, and Israel... the United States' greatest ally, especially in the Middle East.
But it seems like, from what we just spoke about earlier, that there's actually something bigger going on. Why are all the U.S. presidents so consumed with this little country, Israel, and establishing peace in their own terms? There's something else going on, and I would call it a God thing.
And should applying pressure to negotiate with the Palestine Liberation Organization or the Palestinian Authority be one of the top pieces of the agenda?
Absolutely not.
Both organizations are dedicated to destroying the state of Israel and the Jewish people, annihilating them. And we're at the top of the agenda to bring them back to the negotiating table.
I think of all the Bible. I just keep thinking prophecies and what's going to happen. The Word of God is very clear about what's going to happen. God's going to roar from Zion. We talked about that last week. God's going to do this thing. He's going to take over. Israel's not. Don't worry about Israel. To me, all the people out there would be saying, be careful of how you treat this nation. I think that's what we've been saying ever since the beginning. When President Donald Trump started putting these things about Israel, we believe, the most pro-Israel president in Israel's history. Yes, and we're very appreciative. But we were very concerned about how he was treating and the issues that you just brought up. Is it really his place to tell Israel they can do this or that? And should he be pressuring a terrorist organization to start talking with Israel again? Absolutely not. That's where we say, no, there has to be a balance here.
So should Israel, and a lot of members of Knesset here in Israel saying, we got 2 months left. If we're going to apply sovereignty, we got 2 months. We got to do it. Should they be concerned about whether President Trump approves of it or where the lines are marked on the map? Or should they be concerned with simply running their own country and being a strong country and a strong people and applying sovereignty in all of Judea and Samaria.
Luke, we're going to talk about this in just a second more about the UAE and all this stuff going on there. I think this is what's happening is Israel is slowly, and God's doing this setup, Israel is slowly taking more powerful. Israel is slowly gaining more and more power throughout the world. And we know at the end of the day, Israel will even be the global superpower.
Exactly.
That's the end of the story, and everybody knows that. And that's why every nation is cued in on Israel. Every paper in the whole world is filled with what's going on in Jerusalem, what's happening in there, and what's going on, and how is Iran fighting it, and who's battling against the Jewish, the state and the people of Israel, what's happening there. So at the end of the day, we know that God has a huge, his word will go forth of Zion. And Luke, you just have to note, if you guys can hear that out there, there's blessings coming upon this nation, and that's the blessing of rain.
Yeah, maybe we should just let you listen to it for a second.
We just let you listen to it. And hopefully it just keeps going and going and going. Because if it keeps going, guess what? The 2,279 trees we planted are going to grow a lot better.
Oh, yeah. We've been waiting for this, actually.
Literally just over the last few days, Luke, we talk about greening of Israel. The entire nation went from a desolate, barren place to now grass shooting up all over. Literally, there's spikes of grass shooting up all over this mountainside.
It's amazing how fast the country starts greening. Like literally just green everywhere. Grass, trees, leaves, flowers. It's just blooming.
So we can thank God for this rain, and
Amen.
We'll talk louder because this is a mighty storm that's hit the Mount of Blessing, and we're grateful for it.
Right.
Every drop of rain in this land is amazing.
Yeah.
Luke, we're talking about the normalization and the annexation now, and what is going on here? What's happening? We talked about Donald Trump and how that relates to it, and how God is truly over all, and we don't really need those opinions. Israel's going to succeed and be they're going to be okay on their own.
That's right.
Even Joe Biden in office.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Israel pushed through.
It might force Israel to look to God for their strength and help even more.
Yeah,
and also for Christians who support Israel, it should inspire you even more to take action.
Yeah.
And to be even stronger in your support of God's kingdom here.
Even when Obama was in, the nation of Israel succeeded and went through. They pressed through.
8 years.
8 years. There's not going to be any difference here. Israel is going to succeed and go forward.
Are we good? Do we need to stop? Okay,
we're good.
So it's funny. I get some of my news about Judea and Samaria from liberal sources, which is actually great because they're very detailed in reporting everything that happens in the biblical heartland. So, to the shock and dismay of the Palestinians, the UAE played host to a delegation of Israeli settlers for discussions of commercial opportunities between the two parties. In so doing, this is in the words of the liberal news where I got this from, the UAE has given legitimacy as an Arab state to the role that settlement, businesses, and industrial zones play and will play in the economy of the West Bank, something that entrenches the permanency and profitability of Israel's occupation. They're pretty good.
They're pretty good. You know, Luke, what's amazing is we know a lot of these business owners. Yeah. And we also know the head of the delegation. Yossi Dagan was the head of this delegation, went to the UAE.
He's the head of the Samaria Regional Council.
Who went to the UAE, and they actually had like 20 meetings, individual meetings with businesses and companies, and they mostly worked with agriculture, pest control, and plastics, which is interesting that they mix these three, but that's exactly what the companies here in Judea and Samaria, the joint...
And I want to make a note is that these liberal news sources, they're saying that settler business people they're working with UAE on economic peace coexistence models, which purports that settlement businesses actually benefit Palestinians because they provide employment opportunities. And they mean that as like, now this is in supporting Israel's occupation of the West Bank. It's amazing because it's true, and we know it firsthand, literally firsthand, like on the hill behind our studio here, or on the next hill where the community of the Mount of Blessing is. The Palestinians do the construction work on new buildings and houses there. And just down the road, the representation that was with Yossi Dagan in the UAE, industrial factories, they provide equal opportunities to Palestinians with wages, jobs, salaries, benefits, vacations, health, whatever it is. This is actually providing help and opportunities to Palestinians to make money to support their families, to have normal lives, which at the end of the day is much, much, much more than their own people and their government does.
Look, let's hear what Yossi Dagan, the governor of the region, says, and then we'll hear from the other side. We've got two different sides here to the story. What Yossi Dagan and the regional council thinks about this progress being made with the UAE and what the Palestinian people around here might think. Here's what Yossi Dagan says. Yossi Dagan says the UAE is an advanced country at the forefront of development and investment. It is our honor to forge trade and industry ties with them. That's the statement from this area. That's noble, and they're gonna succeed with this. I think they're gonna do very well. Here's the other side. Nabil. How do you say that, Luke? You got to get your Arabic accent. Sha'at. He's an aide to the Palestinian president, Mohammed Abbas, and he says, Mahmoud Abbas, sorry. He says, painful to witness Arab cooperation with one of the worst manifestations of aggression against the Palestinian people, which is the Israeli settlement of our land.
So again, we see the Palestinian leadership is more concerned about delegitimizing Israel than it is about their own people prospering and having food on the table.
So the end of the day is what you said is exactly right. This guy stands against his own people having jobs and living successfully.
They would
with
rather
good business.
pay murderers in Israeli jails than provide jobs for their own people. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Guys, got to start wrapping up the show. We got some amazing news again from liberal sources. This is Peace Now reflects on 4 years of Trump. I think this is just incredible. And of course, Peace Now is the liberal NGO that they call themselves the settlement watchdog, basically.
You know what? You got to hate it when people come up with really negative organizations and they call them something juicy like Peace Now.
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody want peace now?
Of course.
But this is like the opposite of it. Don't be
we've seen
deceived.
them. I've met them. They're not about peace now. You've met them too.
Not very peaceful.
So a summary of this is from Peace Now of Trump's impact on the settlements. Peace Now takes a look at the totality of Israel's de facto annexation of West Bank land in the last 4 years. Their findings are the number of plans promoted in the settlements increased 2.5 times compared to the previous 4 years. That's over 26,000 housing units were promoted in the settlements between 2017 and 2020, compared to 10,000 in the years 2013 to 2016. Number of tenders, Josh, what's a tender?
It's like when they...
it's like the pre-approval to building projects, right?
So
like
they would get
land,
approved for.
like approval for the land kind of thing, right? Like permits and stuff like that. Number of tenders in the settlements doubled in those years. Infrastructure and road projects were designed to add another 1 million settlers. This is from a liberal news source. I'm not sure if that's completely accurate, but I think it would be great. We do know that they are building bypass roads and expanding the highways. I do know that's happening. I'm not sure if it's happening.
Well, it's been approved. Here's the problem, Luke, is the budgets have not been approved.
Right.
These big
some of the tenders
have
been approved. Yeah. And it is in progress, a lot of it. And that's like expanding highways.
So if you want to pray for Israel, pray the budgets.
There's actually a
be approved.
bypass road near us that is in the process of approval. It's gotten through almost all of the stages.
It just needs the budget, which is a big one. Pray for the budgets to get passed.
Finances. Construction was promoted in places particularly destructive for the prospects of peace. You've already heard what their definition of peace is. And where Israel did not dare build in the past due to international opposition. That's cool that Israel is actually daring to build in places they didn't in the past due to good positive pressure from the international community. And they, in the past 4 years, promoted plans that will add 100,000 settlers in settlements that Israel will have to evacuate under any realistic two-state scenario.
Thank God.
That is not realistic.
Well, a realistic two-state solution.
Yeah, evacuating. And actually, Trump has said that. They would never call for any Jewish person or home to evacuate or to be pulled up from where they're living.
Well, Luke, what they said is exactly right.
And
any realistic two-state solution.
And they also named the two-state solution, which is
dead and gone.
Dead. Yeah.
Dead. This calls it dead. Like nobody's going to uproot 100,000 people. Come on, get a grip. This is never going to happen. Might as well forget talking about it.
Last but not least, 31 new settlements, they call them outposts, brand new settlements were established during the Trump administration compared to 9 in the previous 4 years. Guys, there you have it. Very good things have happened for Israel's biblical heartland in the last 4 years, especially compared to the 4 years before that. President Trump has done amazing things for Israel, and for that we say thank you so much. We would love to hear from you.
And Luke, we got to let everybody know that if they thought this rain was a disturbance, this is the farthest thing for a disturbance. I hope you heard the rain, the thunder, the Beautiful storm happening on the mountains
Yeah.
here, because this is literally the second rain that's happened even
Yeah,
since April. So Israel's literally not had
Israel
rain
need-
since
it's
April.
hard to
We
fathom,
need rain.
especially if you live in a country that gets a lot of rain. It's hard to fathom. If you've been to Israel, you know Israel needs this rain, and those 2,279 trees that we planted especially need it.
Especially all the farmers are
Yes.
absolutely dancing.
I
in
hope
the
you
rain
did
right
hear
now.
the rain. So we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a comment on YouTube or any of the other platforms you listen on. Meantime, be strong, be courageous, and be the voice of Joshua and Caleb in your generation.
I believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.